Welcome to all the people logging on. Lots of names you recognize, some we don't, which is part of the point of today, which is to introduce people to alumni who don't know about it and are really interested in learning. And then also for existing alumni leaders who are already running a program, whether it's with us or whether it's a manual program or something else, give them food for thought and to help them to strategize and take advantage of some of the work you've been doing, Jillian, over the last few months. Well, actually, it's more than a few months now. I think I've monologued for a good 60 seconds to allow people to find their way in, which is me practicing for my next job as a chat show host and just sort of waiting for people to sit down and finish, get comfortable in their seats. So I think Jillian, Phil, we'll kick off. A quick introduction, perhaps. Jillian Caffrey, you're the alumni lead at BlackRock, charged with spending a lot of time and effort curating, running, launching, extending and strategizing around alumni. So probably actually the Chief Alumni Officer of BlackRock, perhaps. A quick hello from you and an introduction from you, and then we'll introduce Phil.
Perfect. Thanks, Emma, and thanks everyone for joining today. So excited to be here and honored that I was asked to participate. As Emma mentioned, my boss, Sir Robert Fairburn, is the Vice Chairman of BlackRock and notably has dubbed me the Chief Alumni Officer since I'm the person under him who is doing this as my full-time job. I have been at BlackRock for the past 5.5 years, into this role probably for the past, I guess, 7 or 8 months. Previously, I was in a marketing role in the brand activation team, so excited to be doing this full-time. I am incredibly passionate about the employee experience. It's a lot of what I dedicate my side of the desk job at BlackRock to, and my full-time role is doing alumni relations. So I'll pass it along to Phil.
Thank you. Phil, do quickly introduce yourself to those people that don't know you that are on the line today.
Yeah, good morning, evening, afternoon, everybody. My name is Philip Sanford. I'm our VP of Customer Success here at Enterprise Alumni. I have the joy and fun of working with our customers like Jillian on a daily, weekly, monthly, hourly basis in some cases. I've been here for about a year running our customer success team. And prior to that, I was at JP Morgan running our sort of standing up and co-running our alumni program there. And similar to Jillian, so start off in a brand role as well. So I think that we can probably tug some threads there and connect some dots for some folks on the line as well.
Awesome.
I don't have a sir or a chief in front of my title, and I'm feeling kind of bummed about it.
Yeah, well, nor does Jillian, and nor do I. So, you know, that's okay. I'm working on it though. So, Jillian, perhaps we can just start very broadly, and then I know we've got some really specific information that we can share with everybody. Take us a little bit back in time about why BlackRock started the Alumni Network. Where did this all begin for you, or perhaps some of the other people, including Rob, who are involved in this? Where were the roots of this?
Absolutely. So for myself personally, I'll take it back actually last March. I am a fan of a number of podcasts, one of them being the Harvard Business Review IdeaCast. And so all of a sudden I found myself listening to the latest episode was all about corporate alumni programs, to which I had, full transparency, never heard of a corporate alumni program. I'm involved with my alumni program for my university, but I never knew that this was a thing for corporations. So I listened to the episode, all of the 30 minutes of it. Highly suggest everyone listen to it as well. And finished that. And I was like, why doesn't BlackRock have this? We are a founder-led company. Our CEO was one of our founders, still in his seat. There's a number of our senior execs here who are still here today. But at the end of the day, as we all know, people leave companies, and I don't know offhand the stat for what millennials, how many jobs they're expected to have, but knowing that like people aren't going to be here for the rest of their lives. So why don't we have an alumni network? And so that was in my mind. And so I sort of like put it on the back burner. I was going to bring it up to a few people internally that I know. Long story short, I had found out that now my boss, who is the vice chairman of the firm and also chairs what's called our human capital committee, responsible for driving the culture of the firm and developing our talent, that this was something that he's wanted to do for years and years. And so currently he's, the past 3 chief of staffs that he's had have actually wanted to start an alumni network, have come up with the business case on like why it's important, including re-recruitment, business development. and just general like brand awareness and reputation, backing for our alums to be advocates of our brand. So I'd say it was no easy feat getting approval, but Rob finally did it, and senior leadership was brought on probably last June, so almost a year from now. And sort of then the gears got running that like, this is something that we're going to invest in, which meant hiring someone full time, which is how I landed up in the seat. And funny enough, I think it was like I accepted the offer, and the next day the team was like, okay, great. Well, we have this amazing firm, Enterprise Alumni. Their bread and butter are corporate alumni programs. Like, you will be working with them. Do you want to join the kickoff call next week? We know you're ramping down on what you're doing in the marketing department, but like, let's get started. Our CEO and senior execs are like super jazzed for this now. So like, let's get going so we can launch by the end of the year. And so that led me to sort of working with Phil and Emma and all of the rest of the partners at Enterprise Alumni to like really lay the foundation for the alumni program. And I will say twofold, and we can get more into this, but I would say it was definitely a mix of myself doing additional research on corporate alumni programs. So I mentioned that podcast, but I was searching the web, like all different, like what does it mean, like how to create a successful program, and then talking to a number of alumni managers. And this is something that I continue to do today. So very open to other people who reach out and like, let's like share best practices, learnings. Obviously companies work in very different ways, which mean their alumni all like look for something a little bit different. But I think at the end of the day, it's really that like network and human connection that are so important.
It's what important, right? It's important for the company. It's why you do this. It's important for us personally and professionally to build a network. I mean, ultimately, we talk about authenticity and honesty in voices. We talk about building meaningful relationships, all of us in our professional and personal lives, which I guess is what alumni is. But it was really, a couple of things you said, alumni is in many ways still a big secret for some people, and fascinating actually for you and for BlackRock that it started top down, right? Typically, that's not always the way that it is. It's often born out of a slightly different sort of problem, challenge, proof point. I mean, in financial services, it's typically very much a brand exercise, has C-suite sponsorship, but for a lot of other people, it's sort of seated at the other end. So I think, Jillian, if I think about some of the things that I know I'd like to ask you and maybe like to ask Phil to participate in as well, given his experience from JP Morgan and also running our success team, you are a relatively new customer and relatively young in the alumni space, so to speak. Perhaps you can talk to us about a couple of things that I think might be interesting. So you've been, I think, in this role for 9 months. You've built an alumni program from scratch after a surprise 24-hour notice that you're doing business with us and alumni is where it's at. What's been your experience to date? And I guess my nuance to that question is, you just told us it started at an extremely senior level. What was the kind of initial stakeholder process across your organization to get traction and support? Because you rock up, some things are already sorted, but probably a lot of other people didn't know about this either because you didn't. How did that kick off, and what's been going on over the last 9 months?
Absolutely. So I will say, although it started from senior level support, Rob recognized, and through research, we found out that there was an estimated 30,000 alums. We did have 2 informal LinkedIn groups out there in the universe without any traction, but thousands of members. So clearly it was the case that like, if you have a LinkedIn group, you have thousands of members, there's not a lot of traction, but people keep requesting, like you have alumni who are engaged, they're interested to hear what the firm's doing. They want the ability to network with other people who used to work at the firm. So like, it's a win-win. Like if we create a formal program, we know that we're going to get engagement, of course. So I will say, in terms of internal stakeholders, right from the get-go, I took a look across the organization thinking of like, this is the first time we're doing this, but realistically, who do we need internally to be involved? I think it's without saying that obviously corporate communication, strategy, legal and compliance, I know is a friend of many on this call, data privacy. And so I really just went out to our leads within each of those businesses saying like, we are doing this. We do need understanding that this has never been done before. It is now a priority of the firm. Like, we need someone to join our working group. So I led a working group of over 20 people, sort of in lockstep at the same time that I started working with Enterprise Alumni to lay the foundation of like how we were going to roll this out. What was our website going to look like? What was the experience going to be once we launched? And then also working on that internal socialization plan so that more people know about it. I think that if anything, over the past few years, I've realized this more and more, but like the more information and the more you can socialize, the better. And sometimes when you're in it, it feels a little bit duplicative. But listen, people sometimes they need the constant reminder. And I think the more that we can drum up excitement, and then for each individual business, proving the business case on why it will benefit them is really important.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, I'm going to ask Phil a comment. So to comment and to answer a question. All those stakeholders, the more people you can get involved, the better, right? We all know that on all projects. Pull people in and it helps move, especially in a very large organization. And by the way, Bridget, we'll get to your question afterwards. Thank you for asking that. Phil, for you quickly, that might sound intimidating, but we know that Jillian pulled all those people together with a super senior sort of level of support as a full-time person on Alumni, after it started in many ways. Do you typically, even with JP Morgan, but even, now we've got customers from 1,000 people organization to 200,000 people organizations. Do you typically see that many people involved at the early stage? I hear about what Jillian's doing and I'm like, this is all moving at the speed of light and it's spectacular. Is this normal these days?
The short answer is no. So I think for our our friends and customers on the line, if you don't have that army, that cavalry behind you, it shouldn't be just sort of discouraging and you're not doing something wrong. It's just it's a luxury that some orgs have, right? What really takes is a singular vision, and sometimes it only takes one person to hold a North Star to say, hey, this is why we need an alumni community, and this is what the firm is going to get out of it, and this is what our alumni should expect to get out of it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a number of levels of nuances and Jillian's at kind of full speed ahead. Jillian, I think if we can step backwards and think about, and we've got a vote here where we're asking people to give their input. What stage of alumni are you at? Thinking about it? Do you have programs? Do you have a platform? I mean, how did you get started? So what was your time most spent on? And there we are. And as I speak, up pops the survey. What was the thing you spent most time on to be prepared and to think about, which might be useful to avoid any surprises for people who are thinking about doing this?
Absolutely. I would say from the get-go, I recognized that, and in talking with other alumni network managers, that the registration was going to be so incredibly critical. I think this is where we spent the most time and had the most iterations, and even post-launch is something that I've also revised. I think that we recognize, and even LinkedIn, as a side note, is my new best friend. I see people who even on their LinkedIn still have that they work at BlackRock and do not work here, or maybe they used to work at BlackRock and they haven't even updated their new role. But recognizing that once, and taking a step back, we also started from scratch. There was no importing of data when we launched our alumni program. This was a strategic decision that we made. We did do testing with friends and family, a small cohort of people, but on that launch day, I think there was like 10 people in the system. We recognized that it was important for people to sign up with their latest information, have it be correct, because that was going to be essentially the basis of all of our networking and programming. So it's critical that we got that right. And at the same time, I think that you don't want an extensive registration process because that deters people from actually signing up. People are so used to things being so quick and efficient, but at the same time, it can't be short that we're not recognizing and understanding who our alumni are, where they are particularly, because that helps us with inviting to in-person events, but also understanding what they're doing, because there's been content and opportunities that we're able to share with our alumni. We don't want to share it to the entire global base. We want to share it with a cohort. So it's really important for us to get that registration right, which that I'm very proud of. And that I would stress to all alumni network managers is to take the time to get that registration to a point where you think you're getting enough information and detail from your alum but not making it too burdensome for them to sign up.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose what we know from all of our A/B testing and our experiences, obviously, if you make it too cumbersome, people drop off. But I've got a list of questions for you, Jillian, but I'm really just going to go with some of the things that you're raising that I think are really topical. And by the way, please do send your questions through. I'm keeping a list of them, and we'll take a pause and we'll definitely answer some during the webinar. But you talked about internal stakeholders, you talked about thinking about the sign up, and you talked about, starting from scratch effectively. Yes, you can find some people here, there, and everywhere, but you didn't have a database. What metrics were important to you? And are you, how are you measuring success? And is community size important to you? I mean, I know from Phil that you had a really quick sign up and swelling of your community. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So we launched January 10th, and I think within the first week, we had over 1,000 signups, which was incredible and resulted in me doing a lot of approvals on the week of, which was fantastic and super exciting. I would say, first off, the number of alumni included is important to us, but at the same time, it's not exactly what we're like pinpointing. I think at the end of the day, and everyone knows that famous saying, like, it's quality over quantity, really making sure that we're doing a lot for a variety of people and making sure that they're engaged. I think at the end of the day, that the who is joined, like, I think the anecdotal feedback is something that goes so incredibly far. Going a little bit into the metrics, a shout out to Phil, who helped me create an amazing metrics report that has been incredibly raved upon by people who work internally at the company. And it's something that selfishly, I think the more promotion internally, the better. Right now, my latest metrics report, I think I sent out a month ago, had over 500 people on the distribution list, and is growing because then it's forwarded to them and they said, hey, can I get the next one? And what people and our internal stakeholders are really intrigued by, I would say, for senior leadership, it's definitely the who has signed up. So it's the former employees who are now CEOs, who are running different corporations, who are current clients is really important. But then I think the what we're doing and showcased in those metric reports is really important. So one example, and knowing that not everyone's going to attend an in-person event, we are, and we could talk about this later, really focusing on in-person events right now. But one thing that I did early on was our CEO wrote the foreword to a book about purpose. I gave out over 200 copies of that book to alums and received incredibly nice notes, a LinkedIn post saying
was that
so great.
Sign up perk? Was that we launched and we offered people a gift, or so we've talked about you've got 1,000 people in week one, and my mind is blown, and we all know you therefore must have spent about 5 times the normal hours at your desk. But so the correlation is you start a community, you've already got 1,000 people before you even kick it off. Have you been so I know you've had events. Is that a perk? How have you started to build that community, and where does that story of the book came from, right? Because we've got a lot to cover and a lot to talk about. How does that fit in? Was that a sign up when you get a book?
The book was not a perk. The book was more of a promotion that this book came out. BlackRock has focused on our purpose for a long time, and actually our chief marketing officer worked really closely with this Harvard Business Review professor that wrote the book on purpose. But I will go into the perk that I provided was actually to our employees. So recognizing that employees are one of our biggest stakeholders in promoting, and also can be very, very helpful as a team of one to growing the alumni network. So I offered a promotion to our employees, that the employees with the largest number of referrals to get signups to the network got gift cards to the company store. So that was sort of a early on competition. Once we launched the Alumni Network, that promotion and overview of the program was shared in an executive communication from our chairman announcing the program. Then it was reinforced through our One BlackRock Bulletin, which is a weekly newsletter that comes out. And then the last way, and it continues today, because what I've also found is at a very local level, that reminder for people that And an example that came out, I'm going to go to Princeton, New Jersey in about a month to do an alumni network. We're now doing localized reminders saying, hey, Princeton, we're coming in a month. We're going to do an event. Spread the word with your former colleagues. As a reminder, the people with the most referrals get this gift card. And our employees have been amazing and just helping me spread the word. And they're asking questions. Should I do it through email? Should I do it through LinkedIn? And some people, a lot of our our employees and our alums are so close, they're texting. They're still friends. They see each other on the weekend. So just reminding them like, this is coming.
Yeah, and there's that virality, right? So there's community in all parts of the business, and we all typically stay in touch with people. I mean, speaking for myself, some of our earliest supporters and earliest customers are people I worked with years ago, and that's just a reminder to kind of leverage your community. And everyone likes a perk or its incentive, right? Even if you're a really high earner or wherever you are in the business, everyone loves a perk. Jillian, you mentioned something, and then I'm going to ask Phil to comment on this. You mentioned the Princeton example. You mentioned you've done a lot of events. As we said, you've done a lot in 9 months, but you can't please everybody in an alumni community, right? You try and please as many people as possible. What sort of events are you doing globally, and how have you communicated differently with some of the subsets of alumni? Princeton alumni, super senior bankers in Switzerland, whatever it might be. We'd love to hear a bit more about that. And Phil, just tagged on to that for you to think about. I'd love to hear a bit more about how you did that at JP Morgan, and perhaps some of the ways that you're kind of counseling people more broadly to do this.
Absolutely. So I will say events have been my focus full on. It was like launching, getting people signed up, but like sort of went full speed ahead with in-person events. I think also in full transparency, capitalizing that like in many parts of the world, COVID restrictions were dropping. And there was this natural like push, and people were just like dying for this attention to like reconnect in person and meet new people after so long. I would say think about events in 3 different ways. And as a side, we are doing online events, but being very, very particular. Obviously, all of us know about Zoom fatigue, being very particular on like what those events are. So we did one so far, which was one with our market correspondent that saw great engagement. But we also are looking to do a crypto session in the future. I think that's like a hot topic on everyone's mind in the finance world. But in terms of the in-person events, thinking about them in 3 ways. The first is just purely from like a networking perspective, putting people in a room and doing a cocktail reception, no formal agenda. I would say we've done about probably 4 or 5 of these now across the globe. And what happens in those is, other than just bringing people together for drinks and light bites, myself or Rob will say a few words on the alumni network and why we're doing this. And then we usually bring in either the head of that specific office or the business to say a few words. For one example, we just had an event in Madrid. It's a very small office, but we had a number of alumni who showed up, and the head of that office explained what that business is doing and how they've grown over the years. The second bucket of events is really that career development, showing that to our alums that we care about your career long after you've left. An example of that is I was in London and did a networking breakfast in partnership with our women's ERG. And I brought in for the first 30 minutes, everyone into the room. And that actually was my first event where I did a mix of employees and alums, which I could also speak on. I think there is a real key benefit there in bringing those 2 groups of people together. Yeah. But I also brought in the CEO of a career consulting company who did a brief coaching session over breakfast. And then the third bucket of events is specifically in terms of re-recruitment and improving the brand or reputation or the experience of what it's like to work in a specific business. One event that I did also in London was showing how our technology arm, Aladdin, working in Aladdin, how that's changed over the years, both from like a business perspective, but also from a careers perspective, and like how we have changed the way that engineers work at BlackRock.
Yeah, so communicating, and you have to focus, right? You can't do everything. Phil, maybe you can fill us in a bit, because it's been less than a year still that you were at JP Morgan. Can you give us some insights about how you thought about it there? Because you were, BlackRock's a big company, JP Morgan's a much bigger company. How on earth did you deal with all those demographics? And just to add, we've got questions from Bridget, Jen, and a variety of other people. So we're taking good note of those and making sure they fit in at the right time with the right questions.
I think the events is a good lens to prove the point that, you know, whether you are a huge org or a small org, the things that work and the things that you should, you know, spend time on are frankly the same, because, you know, you can't have 50,000 people at an event anyway, unless you're, I don't know, Ohio State football or something like that. So, you know, a lot of the things that Jillian said, I mean, I think will ring true for what we, you know, kind of, you know, consult our customers on, what I've certainly done in my past, what our customers are probably thinking about internally. It's almost that pyramid approach, right? The tippy top, you know, VIP, real kind of maybe business generating or important relationship alumni who have, you know, one-to-one relationships with your executives. Those are going to be those sort of kind of elbow rubbing, you know, cocktail receptions in your sort of strategic hubs. But I think what's really special and what gets a lot of great anecdotal positive feedback from your senior leaders internally is the sort of segment approach. You know, you use that sort of the word cohort, but the whole slice and dice situation. You know, idea for folks on the line, and even for you, Jillian, is what about a training class reunion or a specific project kind of reunion where you're having an event. It's based on the fact that everybody worked at this company, but sometimes working at a big company isn't enough, because you could walk into the room and not recognize anybody. But if you are all in a rigorous orientation or a huge, you know, merger or a project that could have lasted 18 months, you really have, you know, shed the same blood, sweat, and tears with these folks next to you. And on a lighter note, we've seen a lot of success, you know, with our customers doing this, and we did this prior at JP Morgan too. Retirement ceremonies, or even kind of milestone anniversary, you know, ceremonies with senior leaders. They're celebrating their 30 years, their achievement with the firm, but they couldn't have gotten there without a number of folks, and a lot of those folks no longer work at the firm anymore. That's just a nice way to have some recognizable and familiar faces in the same room. Then you have business leaders, whether it's for rehiring, brand building, or actual business development. You're making that face-to-face connection. It's really the intersection of the digital headquarters of an alumni community with a tangible and in-person experience.
I just wrote a little couple of notes of a couple of questions to ask next, and I'm going to just switch them up, because you talked about events and you talked about digital. We had a question from Bridget, which effectively was about the slightly different interface of alumni, which is the digital side of things. How do you communicate with your alumni, and what do you share? Jillian, perhaps you can give us like a snippet and a feel for some of the things that you've been including and sharing in your digital comms, and then Phil will come to you for a question on that.
I will say, in terms of what we're sharing directly with alums via email, we're being very, very, very particular on what is being sent out. I've heard a number of times, and I think all of us can recognize looking at our personal emails, probably even our work emails, that we get a lot of emails. We really want to be selective in what we send to capture the attention of our audience. So we have limited our communications very much so. And because we have just launched, really segmenting and making sure that, and working in partnership with our corp comms to decide what goes out. I think we all recognize that any related leadership changes or like high level org changes that end up being picked up in the press, if we can communicate those changes to our alum early on, the better. People are very interested in basically the who's who, where people are, where they're going, who's joining BlackRock, who's leaving, what new roles, what boards they're on. Like, it's all of that like information that people really are drawn to. So that has been featured in our newsletter, which we're doing quarterly. And then I would say other announcements besides leadership changes that we've included are things like our annual diversity report, anything that was super high level related to global org announcements. One of them, I actually did my first US specific announcement today that went out to those alums. So really looking in the future to sort of regionalize and be more specific in our distribution. But for right now, our announcements have been primarily global. And then at the same time, if I'm sending out an email, I'm acknowledging that people read the email. Some will go to the portal, some won't because they have to log in, but making sure that portal is always up to date with alumni stories, boomerang employee stories, podcasts, and things like that, to sort of attract our alums. And pictures, the most important thing. People love the pictures from events. If anything I can say is that, like, that I've realized early on, people are just so curious. It's like that love of Instagram that people have. They want to see who's at the events, like what's going on. So post those in our portal as well as our LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I was going to say, when you started talking about that, and Phil and I and everybody at Enterprise Alumni talk about that a lot, right? A corporate website for almost all of our customers has to be, by its very nature, I'm not sure what the right word is, but a little bit more vanilla, a little bit more mainstream, very focused, because all of our customers are large, and I'm sure everyone on the line is involved in a business that has that restriction, right? Some of them are public, listed, some of them have financial businesses like yourselves that have regulation. For me, over the years, I sometimes say, especially to people in the US, Alumni is a little bit like People magazine, sort of corporate gossip column, sort of school yearbook, but in a more professional and grown-up way, right? Everybody is interested in people stories, and we find, and maybe Phil has a comment, I know that I do, because I get, I'm in alumni networks. People like to have a quick read about people that they used to work for, they used to work with, or even if they didn't. I sometimes really like, because I'm an entrepreneur, I really like reading the stories of amazing people who used to work at the bank, even though I never knew them when I worked there, who've gone on to build amazing businesses, because the stories can be more personal. Phil, maybe you can just touch on for a moment as well, because there's such a spread of businesses, right? From financial services to healthcare to military, where you have to be more careful. Do you find that too? And did you find that in your previous experience? Perhaps some thoughts on that.
Yeah,
juicy, human, almost clickbait-esque comment. You can't do that normally in a JP.
Well, I wouldn't know anything about reading tabloid magazines, for sure. But I can say, for anybody on the line, you can prove this to yourself. Go ask your internal communications team or your internal kind of your intranet team which type of employee facing content gets the most. It's not what the cafeteria is serving for lunch next week. It is the people story. Well, I don't know, maybe it is, but it's the human interest story, right? And it's sometimes talking about that sort of layer beneath someone's profession. Yeah, by day he does this, but actually, Jane Doe or John Smith does this on the weekends, or involved here and there, yada, yada, yada. The same goes for your alumni stories. And it just doubles down on something that we say a lot to our customers as we're sort of implementing their strategy or kind of working on what that is. When you're looking to relate to your alumni community, it is pride and FOMO. You want to help them celebrate what made them feel great about themselves and why they worked, when they worked at your firm. So some of the things about the diversity reports, we're investing in the community, that stuff. But also, the content that I used to click on every Monday morning, when I was on the train from the employee newsletter, I miss some of that stuff. It's not the investor relations sort of RSS feed that's on the external website, because you can get that anyway. It's a little bit of behind the curtain and helping them feel like, what, I don't work there anymore, but I still have some level of access, to the extent that my legal and compliance friends allow me to some of this, non-state secret, but internal, internal content. And if for those of you planning your alumni strategies, and specifically your editorial strategies, and for our customers who are in implementation now, you'll hear your customer success members say the exact same thing. You don't have to build Rome in a day, bite-sized chunks, repurpose content. And frankly, the one stripe of content that you really could consider curating exclusively are those alumni story, human interest, articles or profiles, or however you want to do it. So that's my 2 cents.
Phil, I will jump in there, because I specifically had to tell my boss, the vice chairman, who wanted to share with alumni investment BlackRock Investment Institute content directly to our alums. I was like, no, Rob, no one wants that. Maybe like a few of your friends who are retired, but like our global population does not want that. And if they want it so bad, they can go on our website. Like, we really need to make sure that we're being very intriguing and like having unique content, and those stories that Phil mentioned that are personal, inspiring. Most of the stories that I write about our alums, they're not doing anything related to finance.
Exactly.
But the points that come out in the stories are how their time at BlackRock impacted them to take their next step.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we all have to respect the institutions that we work for, and we recognize that the common thread is the company, and respect employer branding and corporate comms and all those sorts of things. But ultimately, we have to recognize this is actually an opportunity to be a bit chattier, a bit warmer, and express those things. This is where the company can do this. And this is what, this is not just what people, this is not just for alumni, it's for people that are thinking of coming to work for you, right? If I give up my day job at Enterprise Alumni, I'm going to do a lot of research on where I'm working, what kind of a business are they, what kind of a place is it to work? And that gives you an insight. If you don't have friends, who used to work there, who can say, I can just give you a really quick sense. I think that's probably a tool for that. Phil, did you want to say something before I moved on to
just to
Jillian?
coattail. Yeah, I think just to coattail and drive that point home, for those of you on the line who are either sat in HR or who are collaborating really closely with this is not just a future-facing strategy as far as your people agenda goes. And Jillian led off with this. She said herself, she's really obsessed with employee experience. And an alumni network is, from my experience and from a lot of our other customers, are sort of born out of an employer brand type department. It is connecting the dots and closing the circle of the employee life cycle, because at the end of the day, just like Emma just said, if you're a candidate and you want to know how a company is going to treat you while you're working there from not 9 to 5, but other hours, then let's look at how you treat, employees who kind of, spent 10, 15, 20, 40 years with you.
Yeah. Jillian, I'm going to get back to some questions that I think might be really useful for people about framework and measuring and reporting and internal support. You mentioned earlier sharing and socializing reports and metrics, and maybe you or Phil can talk about what's in them. I'd love to understand a bit about what is in those reports, but also, have you seen new stakeholders or new members of the business buying into this who were initially cynical? I'd love you to talk a bit more about reporting, because I think all of us know why this matters, but we also all have responsibility and information that we need to share, and there's nothing better than measuring something to be able to show the achievement that you've had.
Yes. So one last thing to Phil's point about employer brand, I've become incredibly close with that team. If you do have an employer brand team at your firm, I encourage staying close with them. You can also, we've now shared content. I've written stories that they've used for their work and vice versa. The second thing is to make sure your alumni network is featured on your career site. So before we even launched, it's linked to our career site, it's linked to our corporate site. There's multiple ways people can find it. In terms of metrics and reporting out, I would say I've adapted it now the second time that I've done the metrics report to feature something a little bit different, and have always included the previous reports so that people could go back and see. But examples include the notable people who have joined the network, where people are in the world, and how our signups are doing in different parts of the world. That also has sort of created like a little mini internal competition, I would say, across the globe. Like, oh, we need to really need to get more people in.
I'm like, motivate for the signups, motivate for the branding. I mean, but everybody loves
to be competitive. So like our head of LATAM was like, how are we doing on signups? Like, we don't have enough signups. And he's like, I'm going to push for more. And I was like, okay. I think also it's more of people have caught on and have heard that like we did an event in Zurich, and then you have India who's like, when are you coming to India? And then I look at the dashboard and I'm like, we need more people. Like we need to do a little more work here before we can come to India and do an event. So I'd say we've definitely gotten additional stakeholders. I would say selfishly, promote the alumni network and that metrics report as vast as you can. So every time that I've sent it out, I'm thinking of more and more people that I include in that BCC line But from the get-go, it's including nearly all of HR senior leadership, our entire executive committee that reports to our CEO, our entire global opco, that's sort of at that like -1 leadership level, and then any stakeholders that I've come across. And in general, like making sure that you're looking at who these culture carriers are across the firm, because those are the people. We have amazing employees, and if they're the culture carriers of the firm, they tend to have all of the connections and obviously people who have left. So they've been incredible support for us. And sort of looking forward, one of my next steps is to like sort of formalize that group of employee ambassadors and look for them to help us more.
Awesome. Well, we all need help, right? In our work, in our role as a company. And when people are engaged in this regard, they want to share, they want to help, they want to do something that ties to their personal interest or with friends. I'd love to dig in a bit deeper to Jillian. I'd love to understand a bit more to the extent that you can share this with this group about what you're reporting, what that's looked like, how that's worked. And maybe Phil, you might have some anecdotes or some advice about, if you don't have a tool to do this with, what are some of the things that you can start to think about that you see across early stages of conversations with people before they have a tool to do that with? Jillian, can you give us a sense of that?
I would say
a
few of the high level metrics that are included in that report that goes out are obviously the numbers, how many, who they are, what they're doing, their current employment status, and what their line of work is. The who is in the alumni network. So a lot of those senior leaders who have joined, the outline of events, and then a brief detail on who's attending. I would say one of the most impactful things that we heard feedback on is that a few of our cocktail receptions that we've had have been attended from interns to CEOs. So I think the range of people who are attending, it's not just everyone is C-suite, but we've had former interns who never even came back as analysts who are showing up at our events. I would also say one of the intriguing points that's included in the metrics report are the number of people, unique applicants, who are putting that they heard about a specific job through the alumni network. Because that's showing tangibly that like there is an impact of the alumni network and that people are looking again at jobs. In full transparency, I think a lot of people, and I do this now through events, the anecdotal feedback that I get through events on like what it was like at their time here, what they're looking to hear from the firm is so important, and it helps me build the program. But it's really interesting to see that people who then attend events, there's that like full switch. And I've had people say to me straight that like, oh, I never thought about coming back, but now I'm interested in coming back, and I'm going to go look at roles online. And
You've been measuring that, by the way? Are you measuring activity?
Yeah, that's measured also in our reports. So I'd say that's an important metric. And then social has been incredible for us. As I mentioned before, LinkedIn is truly my new best friend. So sharing, we did a number of Instagram posts, LinkedIn posts. So we're really using LinkedIn in a powerful way. And that's also tied, if your firm does this and you allow your employees to post, we have a program through Dynamic Signal where we have approved social media ambassadors for the firm. So at this point, I've now had 2 different posts, one in January and the one last month, where our employees were promoting the alumni network and getting signups that way.
Again, you're pulling people in, right? And just for the purposes of people that don't know us, that LinkedIn relationship is really important. Maybe Phil can talk to that. And of course, LinkedIn are a customer and partners to us as well. So it's just, it works really well, right? They serve different purposes. Phil, maybe you can touch on that. In fact, it's a common question, right? We know that there are lots of different ways that people need to source people and build communities. And in fact, we've had 2 questions, one from Jen Backer and one from a person who stayed nameless, which is, would you have a dedicated LinkedIn group for alumni or recruit from the main page? And how do you get people's emails in the first place and comms? So it all kind of ties into one bucket. Maybe you can touch on, and then we'll go to Jillian.
Yeah. I'll take the LinkedIn, first, because, yes, it's true that a lot of folks are on LinkedIn and you can use that to find some people, but we're actually seeing more and more and more that number one, not everyone is actually using LinkedIn for the reasons that it kind of started as far as a business networking opportunity. And number two, and we're all aware, LinkedIn is a social network, and it's not necessarily 100% verified or accurate and completely utilized. So while it's a vital resource, it is a supplement to what you all should start thinking about as your company owned, your firm owned, dedicated resource. You also, from a brand advocacy perspective, you need that to live under your roof, right? You want the engagement happening there. You want that data happening there. So to Jen's question specifically that came in, should we have a separate LinkedIn group? Should we not? This answer is going to be a little bit more of an art than a science, I'm afraid. You heard Jillian mention there were a couple of rogue existing LinkedIn groups. If they're there, you can't do anything about them, right? It's not like you're going to go out as the big bag organization and send deceased letters to stop doing it, but cease and desist. But if you don't have one and you're starting a program, I don't think you should be focusing on creating a net new LinkedIn alumni group. And in fact, you would want to just drive traffic to happen on your
I think Jen is obviously, we know Jen, she's from our customer Gowling, so probably she knows that and she's going live with alumni. But I guess everyone's always looking for extra ways and tools, as Jillian is, to find more people and get them to a place where they can be together in a community and engaging. Is that your experience, Jillian?
Yeah, I was going to say that this was a debate that I had early on, and after a number of conversations decided that we were not going to do a LinkedIn group. As Phil mentioned, I didn't try to shut down the ones that exist. If anything, actually, the gentleman who created it, I had posted in both of those groups saying like, hey, we have an official alumni network, join here. But one of the reasons that I decided not to pursue the LinkedIn group, I would say first and foremost, we were talking about measurement and metrics. What Enterprise Alumni provides in terms of the insights and metrics, I would not get from LinkedIn, and all my traffic and content needs to go to the portal. That was a very deliberate decision. So that being said, I think that LinkedIn has helped where it's sort of a little bit extra work on my front, but I think has gone a long way, is that now I'm currently in the process of all of those people who have not signed up for the alumni network, but are part of the unofficial groups. And still today, I get people who are trying to join the unofficial groups. I'm messaging them saying like, actually, you're not going to hear much here. Sign up, because that's where you're going to get your invitations to events and get your communications. So I will say that has been a deliberate effort on my part to really message those people. And I will say it takes work, but people like to feel important and special. And I've had so many people at events say to me or message me back on LinkedIn and we're like, thanks so much for reaching out. Like, I'll absolutely sign up right now.
Yeah, you're, as you say, right? People want to be involved. I guess the other thing about groups, wherever they may be, a social network, people getting together, WhatsApp groups, those things are all really important, right? They're all really important to us personally, professionally. And I have a WhatsApp group from the business I used to work in. But I guess the other thing is, one wants, wherever it is in the world, to sort of own the narrative in some ways of how you can share what's happening with your business, and make sure that people hear from you what really matters. Was that something that was relevant to you, Jillian?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think that, to your point, it's because we just launched, like, my hypothesis is that like we're going to become the alumni network, and our portal and our communications are going to be like the single source of truth for like whatever is happening in the alumni world. And it also gives me the control over like what goes out and what's communicated. So I think that is a really important factor too, to make sure that like LinkedIn groups, while there's a lot of camaraderie in some of them I've heard, I think it's important to control what is being distributed to our alumni.
Yeah,
which I think all legal departments would agree with also. I
was going to say, I don't think there's anyone here that would disagree, right? There's a place for nuance and personal relationships and everything else. There's also, it's really important. Huge companies need to communicate with people. a need to share information that comes direct from the source, because that's, you know, as we all do in professional lives. Jillian, I'm conscious that we probably only got like a good 5 or 6 more minutes. So I've got some questions directly I've been sent and would invite anybody else to put some up here. But maybe I thought a couple of really kind of important anecdotes on the basis that the results of the poll are that, let's have a look, that about a third of the group have a mature alumni network or program, so a year or more, a third under a year, and then there's a third who are either thinking about it or nothing at all. So we've got people at various stages of the journey. A question for you, I was wondering, which is, what is the most important thing you can do for long-term success of a program? Because, you know, you've attacked alumni knowing it's a really important corporate and professional goal. It's something that you're directly focused on. What, given it's only been 9 months, what, for example, would be a really important learning for you off the back of that short period?
Absolutely. I would say that for me personally, it's showing that we care about our alumni. And I've even had a few alumni in person who are like, oh, you guys are just doing that because you like want people back. I'm like, no, like not necessarily. Like, we really want to support people. And I think that like the more that, and this sort of ties into my passion for the employee experience, but to make sure that people feel supported, I think really goes a long way. And even tying to the LinkedIn example, something that I learned from Enterprise Alumni early on was like, on LinkedIn, you see that people get new jobs, they retire from the firm. Like, let's celebrate them. Like, oh, hey, Joe, congrats on your new role. Like, we're proud to have you in the Alumni Network, and then throw in the link, and like have received a lot of traction that way. But really also ensuring that like people feel like they're taken care of and that they have the ability to network within the community, I think is so key. One of my favorite stories thus far in launching the Alumni Network, which ties, I think, into the importance of creating small curated events, is after I hosted the event in San Francisco, I had an alum reach out saying how much she enjoyed the event. And actually, she was at a point in her career, she was like sort of at a crossroads, had reached out to a number of former mentors at the firm. And a number of people suggested that she reach out to this one alum who she didn't know, but she was going to get about to like send sort of essentially a cold email, like asking to like reach out. She emailed me after the event and was like, told me that and said, I walked into the event and I recognized that alum was there and went up to her. And because it was a small, intimate environment, I was able to have that conversation with her, and we're getting coffee later that week. Like, that was like an amazing point where like just creating those moments where people can interact in a small setting, it's created this essentially like web of connections. And I think that some people get hung up very much on the metrics and measurement, but like anecdotes and stories like that, where like people are networking or meeting for career advice or meeting for new business, like that all comes down to us and what we did. And it's sort of hard to measure the web and as it extends where the connection is. But at the end of the day, it's like those anecdotes that make all the difference.
100%. I mean, I was going to ask Phil to talk a bit about metrics and KPIs, but also those anecdotes, as you mentioned, are the things that actually really engage at a senior level, and they make differences to kind of domestic and national businesses, right? Phil, I think JP Morgan had I think Jamie Dimon has a dinner every year. In fact, I think there recently was one. Can you talk to us a bit about the Q&A and metrics that people should be thinking about, but also maybe the stuff that some people would say falls into a bucket of softer stuff, but actually is like at the very heart of business development, brand building, and engagement?
I think the softer stuff, happens first. Frankly, it is a little bit of engagement for engagement's sake as you're growing. And if I chuckle a little bit because we said that a mature alumni network is anything over a year. Well, you're spending the first year really pounding the pavement and being scrappy, like Jillian has proved works, with just kind of finding people here and there, whether it's working with your HR team and blasting emails or just the grunt work. I think that it starts with a strategy, right? You have to have your pillars of success or your KPIs of the reasons why your company is doing an alumni network, and they're not going to probably differentiate too much from what's been discussed on this. And then you can tie tangible metrics to each pillar. We care about rehires. Okay, great. What is your platform showing on visits to the career section or actual clicks or intended applications? We care about business referrals. Okay, great. We had a blank to blank ratio of bankers and C-suite folks at this event, or this senior level person has just joined the network, type of a thing. Or we just care about brand ambassadors. Well, you can do a simple NPS survey on people joining, and you can prove to your employer brand team that your alumni is sort of kind of stacking the deck in a way, or that you can tie that to your community growth. But you cannot, I would caution on saying, okay, we have to have this amount by this date, because you have to stay innovative and flexible to what the culture is dictating as you grow a community. And for a lot of the alumni communities out there, it is going to be a new behavior that you're trying to instill, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess, Phil, it really differs, right? From customers that we have in healthcare, hospitals, hospice care, through to customers in global investment banks, regulated industries, finance, where Jillian sits. I think it's probably fitting, based on the time, to end with a last question to Jillian. And I think maybe we can ask you something broad but really exciting, seeing as you're so early on but have achieved so much. Where does the BlackRock Alumni Program go from here? What are your future plans? Normally the first year, as Phil says, is just filling the bucket and getting people in there, but you've been very busy. Tell us a bit about what's on the cards so that we can watch from afar and gawp at your success.
Absolutely. So I think that, as Phil mentioned, it's not all about the numbers, but I am particularly focused on growing the network. I think something that Phil and I have chatted about is, it's sort of hard to say in a year from now when I'm reaching out to people saying like, join our alumni network, because it's not new. Like, I really want to make sure that like we're getting people in early on and realizing and like spreading awareness that we have the alumni network and it does exist. I would say future plans include, obviously, as many in-person events as I can manage as my team of one. And I'm happy to share best practices with people, but currently innovating, learning from what works, what doesn't work in terms of events, and then really becoming more segmented and direct with creating audiences within the community. I would say one thing that I'm looking forward to doing is, within the group section of our portal, we built out specifically those groups to mirror what our employee resource groups do. I think that our employee resource groups are an important part of the employee experience, and a lot of our alums obviously took part of those groups, but they're interested in what they do now. So whether it's, and I've done this now a few times, but like including replays to some of the ERG events, or like offering, for example, obviously right now we're in Pride Month, but we always do exclusive Pride Month swag with our Out and Allies network, like offering that to alumni to purchase. We do the same with our Vets network. We do Vest for Vets, but offering those specific things to our alums as well. So really building out the content within those groups is in the future.
Amazing. I guess a perfect note to end with, because we've got about 73 seconds left, and it's probably going to take me that long to say, Jillian, from all at Enterprise Alumni, you've blown us away with what you've done on a team of one in 9 months. So a huge congratulations to you. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. And I'm sure that I know that you're keen and willing and open to be part of a network of people who think about this. So no doubt you're going to have a lot of LinkedIn connections in about 5 minutes time. Phil, yes. Thank you very much for joining us. So Jillian, thank you. Phil, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jillian. Keep it going.
Brilliant. Okay.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.